Yun ang ginagamit kong style. So, nalito ako kanina. Nasa last slide pala ako. So, sorry. Buti na lang may nag-cue sa akin. So, binanggit na ni Dr. Raymond si Leonardo da Vinci na siya yung nagsabi na a picture speaks 1,000 words. Yung ano pala, yung saying ay binanggit na ni Dr. Raymond. Pero ang saying ito can be traced back to Leonardo da Vinci, although mas complicated yung pagkabanggit ni Leonardo da Vinci diyan. So I think this is a very true piece of wisdom even for us who are writing about both concrete and abstract things. So napakahalaga talaga yung illustration, even concrete or abstract, mapa-abstract or concrete man, yung pinag-uusapan natin. But I want to go deeper than Da Vinci's quote, because for us scholars, we can actually start with illustrations, conceptual maps and diagrams, not just to speak 1,000 words, but actually to produce, to generate these 1,000 words. What I want to say is that pictures or illustrations, maps and diagrams can be the starting point of a scholarly discourse, because these things inspire our creativity and clarify the direction of our research investigations and writings. I'm citing an example, the person who formulated the Benson ring. He came up with the idea after daydreaming about a serpent eating its own tail. Powerful image of a serpent eating its own tail. He was able to formulate the ring, the Benson ring formula. This afternoon, I would like to share with you how to create illustrations, conceptual maps, diagrams, and even geographic maps that are useful for scholarly writing and using only very basic softwares and applications that you can find in most of your laptops and desktops. We are not digital artists. The four of us were not digital artists. We are scholars, we are writers who use digital art to aid in our scholarly and writerly tasks. In my case, I may be an amateur artist in college who discovered my added skill in writing and publication in college also, and who realized that scholarly thinking can be a very visual process. So nauna yung pagiging artist ko, amateur artist sa college, bago ko na-discover na marunong pala ako magsulat. So yung pagsusulat ko, visual din siya. Very visual yung style ng pagsusulat ko. At the University of Santo Tomas, I was mentored by the rector-president. So the rector-president then was a chemist. He was a Dominican friar and a philosopher of science. And he encouraged me to use diagrams and drawings in my essays to make my essays, my writing, clearer. The other speakers of this webinar are all millennials. At 51, I'm going 52. I am the oldest dog in the pack. Josh, for example, is a classmate of my son at San Beda University Elementary School. Our new dean, incoming dean, was my student at San Beda also, so you can imagine. What this very old dog will try this afternoon is to teach you some new tricks for your scholarly and writerly endeavors. And I will talk about three kinds of illustrations: conceptual frameworks using MS PowerPoint, geographic maps using MS PowerPoint and MS Paint, and miscellaneous illustrations using MS PowerPoint again and MS Paint. MS PowerPoint gives me geometric shapes. Well, MS Paint allows me to break these geometric shapes into lines and recombine them into more complex shapes. And MS Paint further allows me to recolor these more complex shapes. And these are the reasons why I move back and forth between these two softwares. So this is a conceptual framework for a paper that I co-authored with my graduate student, Ms. Faye Fuentes, on the strategies of the people of Miagao to keep their heritage weaving tradition alive. So we're talking here about hablon, the Miagao textile called hablon. A conceptual framework is very important in the planning stage of your research, especially if you have collaborators, because this will synchronize our visualization of the project. You cannot make a conceptual framework in one sitting. This is a thinking process where you manipulate your diagram over and over again until a workable model emerges, or until a workable model is achieved. This is the reason why you cannot rely on a digital artist to do this for you and list throughout this difficult, this prolonged thinking process. Once a framework is created, it will be easier for you and your collaborators to plan the flow of your research project. There is no guarantee, though, that you will not change the conceptual framework once new challenges and insights emerge from your initial research. PowerPoints can make very fancy charts. So there's an application in PowerPoint that will give you very fancy, very colorful, very fancy and colorful and elaborate charts. And I do not use such feature because the output will not appear crisp. They will not appear clear in black and white printed journal articles. This is another conceptual framework for one of the papers that I co-authored with Dr. Jeanette Backing and Ms. Irene Delenya on inter-ethnic group stereotyping in TSU. And I believe they're replicating this in VSU, and they're about to publish their paper on this in VSU. Dr. Jeanette, I think, is here. I saw her name. I saw her a while ago. Can you create these conceptual frameworks using MS Word? Yes, if they are simple. But once they become complex, MS Word will go crazy. And it will be very frustrating for you to deal with MS Word using or making this very complex things. So I discovered that MS PowerPoint is more powerful in creating these kinds of conceptual frameworks. So conceptual frameworks are just a collection of geometric shapes. Get the shapes from Insert menu, where you can find the Shapes submenu. So this is the Insert menu. The Shapes submenu is here. MS PowerPoint is already sufficient for conceptual frameworks. There is no need to move back and forth between MS Paint and MS PowerPoint. So this is the, once you click the Shapes submenu, this will be the tools that will appear. Once you click the shapes, of course, I mentioned that already, this will be the tools that will appear. And the most useful items here are the text box. A text where you can type your labels inside. So this is the text box. This is very useful. The line, this is the line, very useful also. The arrow, very useful also. And maybe the rectangle and the circle. So you need only very few tools when you're creating your conceptual framework. So just the text box, the arrow, the line, the rectangle maybe, and the circle maybe. Very basic, very basic. So you don't need to explore the other ones. Okay, so later on, when you master using these very simple tools, then maybe you can explore the more complex shapes. Okay, so this is an example of a very rudimentary framework. Once you start working with geometric shapes, a new menu will appear named Drawing Tools menu, or Drawing Tools format. Okay, this menu will suddenly pop up once you start working with the shapes, with the geometric shapes. The Shape Fill tool will allow you to color your polygons with gray or black or any other colors. But in my case, I'm using gray or black because I am thinking of the printed page, the black and white printed page. So this is the Shape Fill menu, very useful in coloring your polygons. The Shape Outline tool will allow you to color your outlines or lines. Okay, so this will color the polygon. The outline of the polygon or the lines will be colored by this. Okay, so again, I'm using gray or black. The same tool, the outline tool, the Shape Outline tool, will allow you to change the thickness of your outline. You want a thicker line, you want a thinner line, you can use that outline tool. The same tool will further allow you to change the style of your line into solid line, or broken line, or double line, and there are many options there. The Arrange submenu will give you a tool that will allow you to rotate your figures. So if you want to rotate your rectangle from this, there's a tool here in the Arrange menu. This submenu also has a tool that will allow you to group together several geometric figures so that they will behave as a single collection of figures. So at this point, you need to explore your MS PowerPoint to familiarize yourselves with these tools and how they behave so that you will develop your eye, hand, and screen coordination. We need to invest time for this. We start with simple diagrams and then we move to more complex ones. If you are already confident, making conceptual frameworks in MS PowerPoint, you are now ready to deal with the non-geometric and irregular shapes, figures and shapes of geographic maps. We are therefore moving from concept mapping into geographic mapping. This time, we will be moving back and forth between MS PowerPoint and MS Paint. So this is an example of a map. Okay? This is a map of the Cordillera mountain range that I used for a paper on traditional Philippine tattoos that I co-authored with Dr. Brent Safra, Dr. Jeanette Kalimag, and Miss Lady Eileen Ambion Orsal. In Philippine studies, which is my main scholarly discipline, maps are important, not only in telling your readers about the locality of your study, but also in telling them about so many other things. In this map, we're telling our readers about the ethnic territorial boundaries of the Cordillera, as well as the more modern political boundaries of the province. So you will see that the ethnic map of Cordillera does not coincide with the political map of Cordillera. I could not find an existing map that would give me those details. So I had to construct my own map by layering the information from 2 or more maps. So there's a map that I saw about the ethnic map of the Cordillera. Then there's another map, more common map, about the political boundaries, the provinces of Cordillera. So I layered them using MS PowerPoint and MS Paint, of course. What are the advantages of making your own maps? First, you elude the cumbersome copyright issues. As long as you acknowledge your source maps, your base maps, you will be exempted from dealing. Okay? So you avoid this cumbersome problem of asking permission from the copyright owner. Second, you get what you specifically wanted. With ready-made maps, there are details there that are there, but you do not need them. You do not need these details. And there are details that are not there, but you need them. Okay, so if you make your own maps, you will have the details that you need, and all the details that you don't need, they will not be there. So your maps will not be cluttered. Third, ready-made maps are often colored that won't print well in black and white journal pages. Fourth, the font size, the styles would not match your paper's font sizes and styles. So ibig sabihin, masakit sa mata kapag pilit mong ilagay yung isang mapa na kinuha mo lang kung saan-saan. This is another map that we use for our NCCA-funded project on the 7 Filipino-Spanish heritage churches of the southern and southwestern part of the island of Leyte. With Dr. Geraldo Fernandez and Dr. Leslie Ann Luwanag, we're going to launch this book later after this webinar. You can see here a layering of information coming from a political map, an ecclesiastical map, a location map of the 7 heritage churches, the fault line map from PVOX, and the location map of the 22 volcanoes on the island of Leyte from Project NOAA and VVOX. Okay, so you cannot find a map that will give you all the 22 volcanoes of Leyte, but I was able to create this by looking at several maps. This map had to be really custom-made for our project proposal to convince NCCA that they should give us the fund, as these churches are certainly at risk from the fault line and from the dormant and active volcanoes of Leyte. This is another map, an ethnic map of Xinjiang province in China that we used for a paper that I co-authored with Mr. J.B. Pareño from the philosophy department about the Uyghurs, about the Uyghur homeland that is now dominated by the Han Chinese. The Uyghurs are now being subjected to very intense digital surveillance. So I think narinig nyo yung Xinjiang at saka yung mga Uyghurs dito sa controversy ng Mulan, yung 2020 Mulan. Parang pinagbawal sa China yung Disney production na 2020 Mulan dahil part of the movie was filmed in Xinjiang, ayaw ng mga Chinese Han na ma-expose masyado ang Xinjiang province. So, yung mga Uyghurs ay mga Turkish, yung appearance nila ay hindi Chinese, parang Turks sila, pero ang religion nila pala ay Muslim. So, gusto ng mga Chinese, majority Chinese na maging Han yung culture nila, buburahin yung culture nila. So, itong homeland nila ay Uyghurs at mga Kazakhs yung nakatira diyan, pero unti-unting pumapasok yung mga majority ethnic group na Han Chinese. The map shows clearly the geographic locations of the Uyghurs, the Hans, and the Kazakhs of this Chinese province, as well as the surrounding countries and provinces of the same province. The shading that I used will print very clearly, very crisply in black and white journal pages. So how do you create maps using MS PowerPoint and Paint? MS Paint. I'm sorry for the web. First, you should have your basic model picture of the map that you want to draw from the internet, as well as other maps that contain the other information that you want to include into your finished product. The principle here is from your basic model map, you need to trace your new map. Okay, so from the Shapes submenu, you will find this Curve tool. Now, this is the Curve tool. This is the Curve tool, very useful in making maps, but you don't confuse this. Don't confuse this with the Curve Connector tool. This is the Curve Connector tool. These are two very different things. So this one is not very useful in making maps. This one is the more useful one. So you remember this. This is the tool that you will use in map making, using PowerPoint, of course. The Curve tool is your main tool in tracing your outline of your maps, as well as the internal boundaries of your map. Practice using the Curve tool so that you can master its behavior. By clicking it, you create for it an anchor point. By dragging it, you extend the curve line, and by double-clicking it, you terminate the curve line that you are drawing. So you have to master how to use this curve tool. Otherwise, it will be very unruly. Okay? So you have to master how to manipulate, how to control the movement of the tool. So this is an example of a map in progress. I am using red-colored curve lines to trace the map so that it will be easier for me to see my progress. I will, of course, change that into black or gray later on. So here you will see the red lines. I did this by tracing the outline of the map. Later on, I'm going to make some lines also inside the map for the internal boundaries that I wish to make later on. So the technique here is when I'm done tracing, I will just erase my base picture, my template, my main template. I will just erase it, and I will be what will be left will be the outline of the map, of the drawing that I did. I'm also using here the rectangle tool to frame the whole map. So this rectangle here, I use this to frame. So I will see which will be included, which will be excluded in the map. So you will see that when I made the map of Leyte, I excluded Biliran, the Biliran province or the Biliran island. I excluded Samar. I excluded many of the smaller islands because they're not really very important in my in my specific use for the map. I'm also using here the file drawing of the whole archipelago. So I have this in my file that I use to tell the location of the Philippine island on the whole archipelago. I can play with the lines, thickness, color, style to indicate various boundaries later on. Once you're done with your outline drawing, you can group your curved lines and rectangle using group tool in the arrange submenu. And you can change the color of your lines and rectangle into black, then click copy, and then you can bring your initial drawing to MS Paint for editing and coloring. So these are the limited. There are very few. Okay, so once you have pasted your outline, once you have pasted your outline drawing on MS Paint, you can start editing using the eraser tool and the pencil tool from the home menu of MS Paint. You will notice that MS Paint has very few menus and tools actually. For coloring your map with different shades of, okay, so what are the useful tools here? The eraser, the pencil. Okay, so these are the ones that I use for editing. So for coloring your map with different shades of gray, you use the fill color tool. So this one. So once you color your map, this will be your tool. I'm now in MS Paint. Remember, I'm now in MS Paint. So you can pick your color from the palette that you can find at the right portion. So here, somewhere here, you will see the palette, the color palette from the top part of the MS Paint. Once you're done with editing and coloring, you can select the whole map, copy the selection, and bring back the map to MS PowerPoint for labeling or finishing with other details. You can label also in MS Paint, but the fonts in MS Paint are not very sharp. Okay, so I usually bring the map back to PowerPoint so that I can label the map with very sharp fonts. Okay. So at this point, you need to practice. You need to practice tracing simple maps until you master how to control the curved tool of MS PowerPoint and editing and coloring tools of MS Paint. From there, you can move on to more complex maps. Maps are usually non-geometric and uses so much irregular lines. Moving on to the other illustrations. In my case, my other illustrations are usually architectural drawings. We move back and forth again to geometric drawings and repetitive features. So copy paste is useful here. Thus, we will be using MS PowerPoint again for the geometric shapes and MS Paint to cut some of these geometric shapes and splice them and copy and paste parts of the drawing in progress. So I will talk about what do I mean by copy paste in order to replicate features of the other illustrations that I'm going to talk about. Okay, so here I have, I'm now moving on to some illustrations of a church. Okay, so this is the floor plan and the facade of the Maasin Cathedral. Okay, so later on, we will launch this book, the book that will contain these drawings later on. Okay, so this church, what is important about this church is that Baby Digong, if you know who Baby Digong is, Baby Digong was baptized in this church about 75 years ago. So I still wonder whether God still exists in the church after Baby Digong was baptized in that church. So you cannot substitute these drawings with photographs because a floor plan is a floor plan, and you cannot use a drone in order to photograph a floor plan unless you're talking about a ruined building. So maybe you can see the floor plan of the building using a drone. And because the facade will most probably be distorted using a photograph. So if you're going to stand in front of the church and then photograph the church, most probably the sides will be distorted. Okay? It will not appear very clean, very neat as this one. Okay. A civil engineer started to create that floor plan for us, but she realized probably that she was too busy and our project too cumbersome because she had to draw 7 facades and 7 floor plans, very difficult to accomplish actually. So she abandoned our project. And I ended up making the rest of the drawings. So I told myself, I conditioned myself, if I can make a geometric map, then I can make a floor plan, because a floor plan is just a map. It's also a map. It's also a geometric map actually. So if I can make a more complex geographic map, then I can also make a floor plan. But if I can make a floor plan, I still had to make that huge leap of faith towards making that facade. Okay, so making that facade is another thing. If I can make a geographic map, if I can make a floor plan, then drawing that facade requires more courage to be able to say, yes, I can do it. The floor plan had no dimensions. I had to use Google Earth in order to get the dimensions of the cathedral, the floor plan. So I went to Google Earth, I measured the roof outline, and more or less I was able to get the dimension of this floor plan. The horizontal dimensions of the facade can be extracted. So that's why I was able to place this detail here, because more or less I know I was able to establish the size of this or the dimensions of this floor plan. The horizontal dimensions of the facade, so the horizontal dimensions, this can be extracted from Google Earth also. I can use Google Earth in order to get the dimensions of this facade. But the elevation, the vertical dimensions, that you cannot extract from. Just a moment. My problem is I'm the one. Deb, please help me. Those who want to be admitted into a room, please take care, because some participants are coming in, are still coming in. So I'm the one admitting them. So please take care.
Okay na, sir. Okay na po. Okay na,
sir. Okay. Thank you, Deb. Okay. So what I was saying is that the horizontal measurements of this facade can be extracted from measurements are things that cannot be extracted from Google Earth. I tried to use photographs with some references, a person standing. I estimated the height of that person and then measured the elevation of some points of the facade. I was able to do it, but when the actual measurements were there, I think off siya ng 4 meters, minsan 5 meters, 3 meters. So hindi talaga pwede kasi distorted nga yung photograph. So what I did here is I had to hire my nephew, who was a civil engineer, newly licensed civil engineer then, and I asked him, you measure this point. So I made a preliminary drawings of the facade and then put some points there, labeled there, and I asked him, here is a laser meter, you measure this point and give it back to me. Give it back to me, the same page with the actual measurements. So I was able to solve the problem also. This is the painted ceiling of this cathedral, very beautiful. The art is pre-Second World War, so this painting is done on galvanized iron sheets. Very fragile actually because of bat droppings. On top of this, there will be so many bat droppings that is slowly eating into the galvanized iron sheets. You cannot remove this bat droppings also because you will disturb the galvanized iron sheets and the paint will simply flake off. So no one can take a photograph of the whole ceiling because the ceiling is too big. So you cannot lie on the floor and take take a photograph of that whole ceiling. No, even if you're going to lie on the floor, you will not be able to take a photograph of the whole ceiling. So, but there are photographs of sections of the ceiling. So what we did is we mapped out and labeled the whole ceiling for posterity's sake. So if something will happen to the ceiling, the photographs on our map, our ceiling map here, will be very useful in recreating this very beautiful piece of art. Since this map is composed of geometrical shapes, this can be done purely on MS, using MS PowerPoint. No need to move to Paint, MS Paint. So this is the facade of the Kabalian Church, a fine example of a Baroque facade. So if usually historians and heritage workers will tell you Filipino churches are earthquake Baroque, but I don't agree with that. Many of our Filipino churches are neoclassical, earthquake neoclassical. Okay, but this one is a very fine example of a Filipino-Spanish church in Baroque style. So you will see this curved lines, even the facade is curved. This is the most vulnerable of the 7 Filipino churches that we studied in our book that we're going to launch later, because 5 kilometers behind this church is the Mount Kabalian volcano, the most active volcano on the island of Leyte, just 5 kilometers behind. 5 kilometers in front is the Philippine fault line. So the church is very, very vulnerable. In fact, the tower, the original tower, had already collapsed. So what you will see here is a very incongruent tower made of modern, very modern looking concrete structure. So you have a Baroque facade with an incongruous modern structure as a bell tower. So I mentioned already that its original bell tower had already collapsed. The repetitive pilasters drawn here were using I used cut and paste method using MS Paint. So the pilasters are these false pillars, false columns here. So once I'm done drawing this, I can copy, paste it here, paste it here, paste it here. Once I'm done drawing this portal here, I will just copy and draw. You will notice that many churches are symmetrical. So meaning to say, if I'm done drawing the right wing, I can copy, flip, and I have the left wing already. So this is the beauty of using MS Paint. I can copy and flip and paste. So this is I think you're familiar with this. You can recognize this building. This is the facade of Saint LaSalle Hall, for an interview article that we wrote with Josh. I wrote with Josh, and Brother Mowell is one of our respondents in this interview article. So even if you're going to stand on the LRT tracks, you cannot take a photograph that will capture this perspective. You cannot have most probably the facade will be distorted if you're going to take a picture of this, even if you stand on the tracks of LRT 1. So only a drawing can represent this very long hall in this manner. So I don't think a photograph can give you, unless it is a composite photograph, but I think that's very difficult to make. I made this for a paper that I co-authored with Josh. I already mentioned this, about this heritage hall that will turn 100 years old 3 years from now, or 4 years from now. So this is older than UST. The St. LaSalle Hall, it looks modern, very modern, but in fact, it's older than UST by 3 years. So you can observe that the facade of St. LaSalle Hall can be broken down into geometric figures that can be drawn using the various shapes tools of MS PowerPoint. I think there are only 3 elements in this drawing that cannot be produced by geometric shapes. So this logo here, another logo here, and the name, De La Salle University. The others, I produced them using shapes in MS PowerPoint. And you will also see the repetitive nature of the drawing. So once I'm done with this part, I can copy paste, okay? Once I'm done with this part, copy paste, and so on, okay? And you will see that once I'm done with this left wing, I can copy the left wing, flip it, and then I have the right wing. So this is one of the features of an architectural drawing, many of the features are actually repetitive. Okay, so copy paste using okay. So this one is a little bit more complicated to see, but so this is the Panopticon of Jeremy Bentham that I digitally produced for a paper that I co-authored with J.B. Pareño. So the map of Xinjiang province was part of the same paper where I made this. I needed to make a new drawing because all the pictures of the Panopticon from the internet are faded. They are faded copies of a page from Bentham's 18th century book. So they have a photograph of that page and they will just copy, and what you have in the internet are faded copies of this drawing. You can even read the labels. So that's why I decided I'm going to make a new drawing, and hopefully other scholars will be able to use this in their classes at least. So you can again see the repetitive features here that requires cut and paste. So for example, this window is just a copy of that window, and so on. This partitions here are just copies of these partitions, and so on. So I just copy, paste, rotate a little, position it here. Copy, paste, rotate a little, position it here, and so on. Okay, so repetitive nature. So this is an example of a work in progress. Baroque Church, still a part of our book that we're going to launch later on. So this is another example of a Baroque church. I'm using here yellow lines to make my tracing easily visible. So you will see that the churches can actually be broken into geometric shapes. Okay, so you will see these are geometric shapes, very simple to make. When I'm done tracing, I will group my lines and recolor them black, and then bring them to MS Paint for editing and detailing. So this is the finished product of the church. You will notice that the tower is a little bit different because this is the existing tower. The one that you see is a wooden tower that already collapsed, I think, 50 years or 40 years ago. Okay, so I already mentioned that, and I hope that with my short sharing, I was able to convince you of the significance and value of adding diagrams, maps, and other illustrations on your next research manuscript. I may not be able to teach you in detail how to do these things, but I hope I have opened your minds. The important thing is to open your minds to the reality that illustrating your research manuscripts can be a do-it-yourself thing, using softwares and applications that you already have. Now, I have to tell you that when I did this, I was not using a pen, I was not using a tablet, I was not using a mouse even. I was just using my laptop for this. So no expensive softwares, no expensive applications, because these are already present in your laptops, in your desktops. So thank you very much.